Delaware. My name is Dr. Dan Young, and this is the Wealth Professor Show. On our show, we're going to talk about all different types of ways to increase wealth, increase success, and ultimately increase happiness. I have two great guests with me today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So, Chris, why don't we start with you?
All right. Christopher Pitt. Happy to be here. I would say my strong suit will be in the real estate and asset management phase, and we love making money, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I'm Philip Michael. I'm the founder of NICE. I'm a real estate developer, and I have a wealth academy that I call The Tribe. And a lot of my time goes towards putting out informational content about building wealth on social media. So this is right up my alley, right?
Yep, 100%.
Yes.
100%. So on the Wealth Professor Show, what we try to do is we try to take complicated topics and break them down into very simple chunks. In reality, what both Chris and what Philip know is that wealth accumulation is simple but not easy. In this country, there tends to be only about 5 different ways to achieve generational wealth. The first way is through inheritance or marriage. Second way is through winning the lottery. So both of the first two ways tend to not be the easiest ways. But the two ways that are within the grasp of everybody is scaling a business and using structured debt to purchase assets that provide passive income. So during the Wealth Professor Show, we're going to talk a lot about some of these different ways that you can put yourself in the best position to build wealth. So each of the different topics that we're going to talk about is broken into laws. So today we're going to talk about a very basic law of entrepreneurship and success called the law of the caterpillar. And then we'll have both Chris and Philip talk about their experiences with that. So the law of the caterpillar, very basic. If you can think of what a caterpillar looks like, little bug, different nodes on it, it's one of the ways that we describe how wealth accumulation works. So the first node of the caterpillar is where we've all been at some point in time of our life. We've had that basic job. For me, it was a paper route. Then I was a stock boy at Happy Harry's. Happy Harry's. Right? And then I was washing dishes at an old folks home.
And you get fired from that place?
I did not get fired, but that's only because my dad was on the board. And so basically this first node is money that's usually paid to you hourly for a basic task. Right. Second way that we get money after we get a little bit older is we get a specific skill set that allows us to be paid for that area of specialty. So I got my PhD from Temple University.
Go out.
Go Owls. Give a hoot.
That's right.
And that allowed me to get a job as a college professor that allowed me to get paid more money. Now, most people, they stop there. But the third node of the caterpillar is trying to lead others to make money for you.
Is that easy?
It is not easy. And believe it or not, Chris, they tend to not teach that in college.
They absolutely do not.
And that's usually because most college professors aren't really great leaders. If someone had to lead for the students to make the money, which doesn't happen. And then the last node of the caterpillar is when money makes money for us. So today, with my two guests, I wanted to talk a little bit about their matriculation through each of those nodes, what's worked well, what's been difficult. As we said, money accumulation is simple, it's just not easy. So if we can provide you with a couple of tips, tricks, things that can make it 1% easier for you, then we can start helping other people build generational wealth. So Chris, I'll start with you. How about we start out with, where your entire employment journey started?
Oh, wow.
All the way to getting into development and some of the things that you learned along that way.
Wow. So first of all, I think I stayed way too long in that first node. I was just too long in the alley node. That's an interesting question. I started off working as a, hard labor as a kid. So I think the biggest problem I had at that point was, you just didn't know, right? You can only do with your hands. You can only do so much with your hands, correct? So and not having the right people around you, and that's important. So, but what I will say is whatever I did extremely well, right? So to your point, I knew that to get income, I needed to do this. And I knew if I do more of it, I should get more income, right? Because it was a matter of survival for me, right? I needed to help my mom during that time. So it was a little slower start for me to get going in the wealth building creation. It was just more surviving. But what I learned from that is just grit. You need grit to get through things in life. Nothing is easy. especially in business, and you learn it out because, like you said, stuff you can read and learn. Especially back then, it wasn't practical. It wasn't practitioners actually giving you the information you need to run a business. So it was too hard to even dream that far. I just was trying to make it to the end of the week, right?
Right.
So to your point, strictly hourly, and to your point, it was very, fine line. Like, you knew if I work X amount of hours, this is all I could do. But at the end of the day, you can only make but so much money, right? So where I really got my start is really when I started playing football. To be completely honest with you, like a linebacker, I read and react like, oh, I see this guy doing this, see this person doing that, right? So you learn it, right? And some of this stuff I actually learned better because I made mistakes at it, right? And once you make those mistakes, you can come up with a better plan. Because I'd rather for somebody not to tell me something that they don't know, right? And I go do that thing, and I'm upset. I'd rather just, if I figure it out myself, but that can only get you so far too as well. Right. So again, I stay very long in that stage of my life. So a real breakthrough came to me. A lot of it has to be an entrepreneur at the end of the day, right? You got to say, I want more in life, and you don't know what that means, right? I didn't know what it meant. I'm just like, this can't be it, though. I just cannot keep working like this. This is not for me, right? So I really kept just this whole notion of trying to be an owner. What does that look like? How do you get a business? How can I make money without using my hands, without being in a tobacco field, quite frankly, right? And that started to drive me. Then I thought it was education, right? It was like, oh, you got to go to school. You should be fine. So then it became my focus, right? Okay, I got to get to school. I got to get to school. But and then but the revenue side of that, then I was discovered playing football, right? That was my first real plan. It's like, oh man, if I can just get here, I know I can make this amount of money, blah blah blah, right? But as we all know, that lane is very slim for a lot of people, right? So that didn't work out either. So again, I'm still stuck in this lane, right? But through all that, the trials and tribulations, I had a passion for real estate. So one of the things that I noticed when I was growing up is just the absence of ownership. Nobody owned anything, right? And all those people seemed to have the same problem I had, right? If they didn't own their home, whatever, they was broke, didn't have any money. It was the same type of people. I don't care who you put it in. They didn't own anything. So I just became obsessed with it. So I started getting into real estate, understanding it, just like everybody else started, right? As an agent, mortgage broker, again, still not, trading time for dollars, so not making a lot of money, but learning a lot. Skill set, right? Skill stacking. So I think that was probably the most important thing for me. I became really aggressive in attaining the skill. I didn't really even care about the money in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how do I learn this? How do I get, JP Morgan level? Like, how do you get there? Like, what do they do to get here, right? So for me, it was just really learning all those things, and then I finally formed a business. And of course, like most people, your first business don't work a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Went through the 08, 09 crisis, felt terrible about it, right? But it also let me know I can survive, right? Mm-hmm. So then I really got pissed off. I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna get my MBA from Florida State. Like, I'm gonna learn all this stuff. But it still wasn't there, right? You have to go through it, man. So fast forward, not to make this too long, I just wanted to make sure. I started off at a slower pace than a lot of people did. So, but I really accelerated once I got a hold of becoming a real estate investor. Because what I did was I took skills from every industry. Boom, boom. CBRE, the Whale Tower. I went there for a specific skill so I can package this thing for myself. Because I know at some point I'm going to have this thing working for me, right? I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to get there. So my phase was, once I got to the point where I had that business, it really started to move up. Then we talked about the power of real estate in general. It's life changing. If you make some, smart financial decision with it, it can change your life seriously. It doesn't make it easy. To your point, you got to be on it. But then I saw a little bit of, I wouldn't even say wealth, income. Like, oh, I can do this, right? I can do this. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes the team, to your point. Like, same thing, it doesn't matter. I started having, like, 2 offices, 3 offices, whatever, right? But I think that is harder, right? To get to work through a team, to get them to believe in your vision, right? And also understand the financial impact they have in their role. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I need you to do this because the revenue is dependent on it, right? But they don't seem to have that same ownership. So we're struggling. Or they be like, because for us, we understand. But for them, they're like, it's a job.
Right.
I'm just getting paid. I'm just, not trying. So that's very hard. But when you find them, game changer. Mm-hmm. Game changer, right? Because, and here's the thing, you don't need a lot of them. You just need a core of them that can, make sure that message gets down. So really, that's really where I got into. I just got into the space now where I became really good at putting things together and running, because everything was so hard coming up. Now I can use those things that happen to actually help me in my business now, right? So I don't get rattled too much. So I can figure out some things. And now I'm just getting to the point now where money is making money. So I want to talk more about that. I think you guys more on that level, but I'm getting there.
And actually, before we go to Phil,
Yeah.
let me ask one question for those of you, for those people who are building the team. Obviously,
Right.
a lot of it is understanding, first of all, who you are and your own inventory of skill sets.
Correct.
You know, and then most of us are either a captain or a general. Like
Right.
I'm much more the captain. I'm much more the thoughts person,
Right.
the ideas person.
Right.
So I try to have a general around me who's doing the project management, doing the spreadsheets, doing the
Right.
like day-to-day checking in.
Right.
Because I'm just not great with that. How any words of advice for people on building a team, either based on things you did well or things that you didn't do so well to start with?
Well, a lot of the journey, the first thing I would say, you're an entrepreneur, so you're a solopreneur most of the time, so you do a lot yourself.
Right.
First thing you have to do is start delegating. That's the first thing. Because here's the thing, just be a little slow to hire and quick to fire. Even though that sounds hard, it's just the truth. Like we know, if in a certain time point, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
But we hold on to it because we don't want to call a bigger distraction, and then it comes then somebody else. It's a
Yeah.
culture thing at that point, right?
Right.
And it's hard to do because, like you said, you put all this. You keep thinking, I just hired this person. We don't wasted money. It's not. It's a sunken cost, but it's more of a value to have the right person in that seat any day, right? Because you're gonna explode when the right person in that seat. So, what I would say is, it's okay to fail because you're not gonna get it right. You are not gonna get it right, but you have to be extremely clear on what you expect from them, right? And just tie them into. For me, I would say the revenue share. I'm like, look, everybody here want to make money. We all got to share that, but talk to me how we gonna do this, right? And just bring them into that. And that's how I incentivize my guys. Like, look, guys, we do a good job. We come in on a budget. I have no problem giving you more of a bonus all day, right? So results matter at the end of the day. So that's one of the key. Like really from the beginning, do not give them any just general role. Like define it, and more importantly, tell them how it's going to impact their lives. I think I've been doing a really good job at that. Just really saying, look, man, if you can do this, here's a path forward for you. Right? Even if it's not with me, you're learning this stuff. You can go do it for yourself at some point. I'll help you. Right?
Yeah.
So it's those things. Incentivize them.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned is that concept of delegation and trying to make sure it's not abdication or assassination. Abdication in the sense that I don't want to do this.
Right.
I'm going to throw this on you. I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to check it. I'm not going to do anything.
Right.
And then it oftentimes works poorly. And then there's assassination where I give it to you, but then I'm over your shoulder every 5 seconds.
Right. I don't want that.
And not allowing you to build those muscles to bring in your own way of doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So those are also things that I've failed mightily at, and many times either abdicating or assassinating a situation.
I tell everybody the people business is hard.
It's very hard.
It's very hard, man.
It's very hard.
If you can get that right, your success is a little easier for yourself for sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So Philip, how about you tell us a little bit about your journey, and I'd love to. And you've created through technology, through real estate, a number of different ways for money to make money.
Right.
For you.
Well, the way that it started for me was this is 15 years ago. I got my dream job that I wanted since I was a child. And I knew inside 5 minutes of being there, just like how once you realize you got a third string on the team and you need to cut them. Yeah. I realized I was a soccer writer. And at the time, my nephew, my adopted brother, he played professional soccer. And our goal was he just became a professional. I'm gonna infiltrate, and we're gonna travel all over the world. I'm gonna watch you play, and I'm gonna write nice about you. This is how we're thinking as children.
Right.
So I sit there and I realized it was the worst type of work that you could ever imagine. I felt as though I was in a factory,
Right.
Because I had to pump out 2 stories an hour. There was no going out to watch anything. I was I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this at all. And I immediately began my escape plan. And I think it's like 5 minutes. And it just hit me right now that it literally took that. Okay, that was a moment.
Right.
And I had done all this work to become a journalist. In Denmark, it's very difficult. It's like very few get through because they have to guarantee employment for every student. So I finally found a way to do that. And then I realized I don't want to do it. So I instantly started looking at MBA programs because I thought, okay, this must be people who know, right? Kind of like you go, I'm going to learn everything.
Yeah,
Little do we know that is something else. I think we all sit with MBAs now, and I don't. To me, I'm not going to speak for you guys, but to me, it's just we can revisit that some other time. But it didn't do much. And then at the time, but that's what I did, and I started hanging out. So I moved to Hawaii and I did a semester journalism school there. But I started hanging out with MBA people in grad school and stuff like that. And I just started learning and just became curious about the whole thing. And my sister and my father are both business owners, but they had me pigeonholed into, because since I was a kid, they thought I was just going to be, I could memorize all sort of sporting events and stuff like that. It's all I really cared about. So they had me in that one, so I would ask them questions, and they just thought, well, is he going to write an article about me? What is this? And anyway, so I started going in that direction. And long story short, fast forward a lot of years, I always had that in the back of my mind. And I would then, my dad owns properties also. Things he would say suddenly started sticking. He goes, because one time he had to buy this apartment, and he said he had to get a loan. I said, why would my father need a loan? I got embarrassed. I felt he was dirty. I was like, is he poor? What is going on? And then later I understood it was financing, that it's leverage, which is something people don't know, that every single billionaire, maybe not every single, there might be a few exceptions, but by and large, 90% of billionaires you see are in debt, in serious debt, probably to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. So don't be alarmed. And I know this firsthand from someone who fits that status, that when the interest rates went up, they had office buildings that suddenly were, and post-COVID, not as many people coming in, and they have to pay their mortgage every month. You think $5,000 a month is a lot? Try $500 million that they have to service debt. So anyways, I realized that very quickly. That's shifted things quite a bit. But fast forward, what I did was something that happened with the university I went to. My student visa expired or something like this, and I was supposed to get this working visa. Something went wrong somewhere, and I had to go through the process of getting a family member to sponsor me for a green card. In that process, I couldn't work. I was doing all sorts of stuff that I never thought I would do, moving furniture. I'm like, this is not what I went through all this school for. But just doing that. And the second once I started doing it, I found work with a real estate media startup. And I offered them to work for free as long as I can get to their events, because there were people there at these events. I was there as an attendant, and I was like, oh my God, I can get in somehow. And I said, all right, if I offer them to go cover their events for free, I have a platform now, and I have a reason for people to speak to me. So I just leveraged the fact that this filthy, not the skill set itself is not filthy, because I leverage it tremendously. But that horrible job, I can use the skill set from that. And I'm like, okay, I know how to write, I know how to. And in reality, I didn't really know much, but I would just do these Q&As. So Q&As, you ask the question, and I would see, okay, I would go to the Wall Street Journal. What are people who are, like, what do they ask generally? I'm like, let me ask something similar, or replace the name, whatever, you figure it out. And then I would ask, and people think I knew all this stuff. I'm just interviewing people, but I'm getting to meet them. And before you become your environment, that's one thing I would say to people.
Exactly.
Just find a way to be in the environment and find a seat at the table, as the cliche goes. But if you're there, you will begin to absorb the things they do unconsciously, the habits, and the lingo starts to make sense. You begin to look at conundrums differently. You begin to problem solve differently. You begin to seek opportunities differently. Before you know it, you have all this information that you didn't realize you had. So I was like, okay, all right, here's a life hack. Just find my way in the rooms, bring something that I have that can help them, and just service as much as I can. Anyway, long story short, ended up being the national editor, and I became a director of something. And then we sold it, and from there, once we sold, that very same month, it's like a few weeks, I got my green card. I closed on my first 3-family property, and I told myself at the time, okay, I am going to work really, really, really hard to the point where I never have to work again. And one thing that people don't seem to think, never having to work again means living on the beach in a mansion. It's not necessarily. When can you have the same level of lifestyle you had before without having to do anything you don't want to do? And to me, in a much, much bigger level, there should really be pursuit number one. Release the shackles of, people don't realize in 9 to 5, this whole tempo that we live under is actually incredibly restrictive, but it's a different conversation. So that was what I told myself, get there. And then this property that I bought, by coming in with very limited pre-built, a lot of people that come from university, there's a whole paradigmatic, there's a shared set of beliefs as to how you do things. For instance, looking at a very basic property, you might analyze a million data points that are completely unnecessary, and before you know it, you've overcomplicated what was really a simple decision. So I realized I had a certain budget to to get the first property. I was looking in Brooklyn and this and that. They said, well, that's where you'll get it. You go deeper in Brooklyn. But then I went west into Jersey City, which was, the area was 12 minutes from World Trade. Going deep into Brooklyn, I had to catch a bus and a subway. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. But it was 25% undervalued. Right. But there's this built-in bias for people in New York. They think New Jersey is, ugh.
Oh, absolutely.
Meanwhile, a lot of the people that move there, they just have to think of the commute. Right. So sure enough, the property went up. By the time it was $750 at closing, it appraised at $80, and it went to 1.2 shortly after because of a development boom in the area. And all I saw was like, I don't know. I can see things are popping up here. Right. I can see this brand new 3 apartments. Right. 2 apartments here and a ceiling that hits me, and I'm not very tall. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And sure enough, my ignorance came to my advantage, and I've always stuck to common sense, you know, with anything. So with sometimes when people talk about certain investments and this and that, if I cannot understand it as though I was a 4th grader or 5th grader, the typical default where people go is, I don't know enough, I must be stupid. I know that is absolutely not the case. I know this shit is stupid. this is stupid. You know? Because if I cannot understand it, then there's some sort of glitch in the system. Right. So that gave me confidence also when I look at deals. I just go look for where's the 5th grade logic? How can I explain this to my nephew? How can I do that? If you cannot explain that to me, then I know there's no sauce, meaning the business model. That's what I call business model. There's no build. There's nothing there. It's just smoke and mirrors. So that gave me confidence also, and a lot of times people associate building wealth with all sorts of characteristics, almost as though you have to be some sort of finance Superman. But it's not the case at all. You can retire with $1 million if you start investing $100 a month by the time you turn 18. And people go, it will take forever. Well, the early rev up is what that's a little bit of a drag, but it's like, you know, and you got to move there. And to your point, Dan, when you asked about when you move from wanting to make money for you hourly, I realized that inside 5 minutes, I was dancing. Let me get back to that. Yeah, inside 5 minutes, and I started thinking about how can I figure out how to create business. And to your point about the different, was it nodes you called it?
Nodes, yeah.
Right. I think the change really happens philosophically and paradigmatically the second you stop looking at the cash flow statement and you start counting wealth on the balance sheet. You start seeing. So once you move from the cash flow statement, because there's a lot of faulty assumptions built in with the cash flow statement. Let's say we know professional athletes, football. If somebody, you see them running around with, young people with money, so I get it, running around with big cars or this and that and the other, and someone would say, this person is rich. I said, no, that person is not rich. That person is liquid because it comes from one stream of income that is too risky and too volatile. And the second anything can happen, that goes away, you're completely down, but your liabilities may still be high. So that does not make someone rich. And there's a number of ways that you could actually leverage that, but we can get into that later. But there's one thing is once you move to the balance sheet, because I treat that money, that is like gasoline. Just because it's liquid doesn't mean you should drink it. And just because money is liquid doesn't mean you should spend it. You know, it's like think of that. Spending too much of your liquid money is like drinking gasoline. The gasoline should go on the fire to build this larger apparatus that can help make money for you. You can leverage whenever you need it. Say you have different assets, and this environment now harder to come by loans. So if you have assets, you could cross leverage them here, or you always have options. You have a toolbox to deal with something. But you only have one stream of income, and that goes away. Your whole thing can collapse in any notice. So that's once you go from the cash flow. Oh, also lastly, people have been sort of falling in love with this idea of certain income tiers as you have. Oh, I make $100,000, I make $200,000, I make $300,000. I was like, well, it's just more that you get taxed. Let me show me the balance sheet. You know, because even with a property, you know, you have to. Really what you do, I'm not a cash flow investor with properties. I'm an equity investor. I want that to grow so I can leverage it later. I just need the cash flow to cover the debt service. And the banks, they typically want 1.25x. To viewers, this means they want you to make, banks give you money so you can make money, but they won't give you a loan unless you make enough money to pay them back and you both make money, right? Makes sense? So that's called DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. And typically 1.25, 3, 3.5. I like 1.5x ideally. But awesome. That's what I'm thinking with that when you move from that little tiny portion, it is simply used to feed the larger. And that's the same thing I've done with my business. I've leveraged and milked whether it's personal IP, personal deals, or just pour it in there. It's just I'm that source for that. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. So we're almost out of time. So let me. Actually we're gonna talk a second about in our next segment about law of the straight line.
Okay.
As it pertains to that. But I think a few real quick things in the last 30 seconds to remember if we put everything together. It's a concept that I call Control-Alt-C. And Control-Alt-C is how you're able to get in the rooms to have these conversations. The A in Alt-C basically stands for anchoring. Be of service to somebody. Even if you don't have a huge skill set, try to, if you see Chris in the room, try to help him out with a project to get in that room. If you don't have the skills, all the master's degrees, try to get in the room with Philip just to get the experience. The L in Alt-C stands for leverage. Leverage in everything. Leverage your experience, leverage in property purchasing, all those pieces. And the TC stands for time compression. If you can sit in the room with these two gentlemen, you will learn more in 5 minutes than what took you, to Phil's point, 4 years of a graduate school education would have taught you. So at all points in times, Control-Alt-C, and that puts you in the best possible position to start this process. So on behalf of Christopher Pitt, on behalf of Philip Michael, I'm Dr. Dan Young. We'll see you at the next episode of The Wealth Professor. Thanks a lot.